The story begins with a boy named Errol sitting with his family, sharing a meal as they celebrate his acceptance among the heroes. They speculate about the class he will receive, but unlike them, Errol believes it will be nothing more than an ordinary one. In this world, hero classes are sacred blessings, granted by a higher entity to children once they reach the age of 10. These blessings grant abilities, talents, and define their path from that moment forward. On the day of the ceremony, the students gather inside the academy hall. The priest begins the ritual, placing his hand on each child's forehead. The first child receives the blacksmith class and happily runs toward his father. The ritual continues, one child after another. Then, it is Errol's turn. Everyone watches, expecting something great because of his family's reputation. Errol closes his eyes and focuses, but nothing happens. The priest is shocked. In the end, he announces it clearly. Errol has no class, a rare case, a hero without a class. In an instant, his family's joy disappears. They begin speaking about his lost future, convinced he will live as a failure without talent. The next day, Errol trains outside with his sword. His parents reassure him that they will not abandon him. He tells them he is fine, but he does not want to be a burden. He reminds them that he has trained with the sword alongside his mother since childhood, and even without a class, he can still be useful. His mother feels proud of his words, while his father begins to think he might still find his own path. After that, Errol leaves to continue his training. At the training ground, he meets two boys with the swordsman class practicing. When they see him, they mock him, asking what someone without a class is doing here. Errol answers calmly that he came to train, just like them. They laugh. Their class makes them believe they do not need training at all. Still, they show off their class-enhanced skills, while Errol watches them with admiration. Without hesitation, Errol challenges them to a fight. They mock him again, but he remains confident, saying he does not need a class. One of them accepts, wanting to prove his superiority. Before the fight begins, he warns Errol to activate the Protection Blessing, a temporary shield everyone possesses. Errol agrees. The fight begins. The opponent attacks, but Errol blocks easily. He attacks again, but Errol dodges. His friend tells him to finish it quickly, but as the fight continues, he realizes Errol is not an easy opponent. He starts to feel he might lose, so he signals his friend. The second boy attacks from behind, but Errol senses it and dodges at the last moment. Seeing their confusion, Errol understands. Their class gives them power, but they lack coordination. He takes advantage of it. He disappears from their sight, then suddenly reappears and lands a strong strike, knocking one of them unconscious. The other tries one last attack, but trips over his friend. Errol finishes him quickly and calmly declares his victory. After that, they accuse him of cheating and demand another fight. Errol agrees immediately. Before the second round begins, a red-haired young man steps in. He scolds them harshly, warning them against making excuses and calling them a disgrace to swordsmen. One of them recognizes him, the son of the captain of the guards, Ivan. The red-haired young man approaches Errol and asks if he is the son of the sword princess, Farah. He acknowledges the strength of Errol's style but explains that his opponents were beginners. Then, he raises his sword. "Fight me, and I will show you the true power of the swordsman class." The duel begins. The red-haired young man strikes with power and precision. Each movement is controlled, refined, quickly notices. His strength is fueled by anger. He waits, then moves into attack. But suddenly, double strike, the second blow lands instantly, catching Errol off guard and sending him crashing into the wall. Spills his first wound. The opponent smirks, mocking him. This, he says, is a skill of the swordsman class. Errol steadies himself. With unwavering resolve, he declares that he will continue training until he can block it and defeat him. The red-haired young man pauses. Hearing those words, he acknowledges Errol's determination. Days pass. Errol devotes himself entirely to training. His sister is confused by his persistence, so their mother shows her a box filled with broken swords, all destroyed during his relentless practice. She is shocked, then impressed. In another place, deep within the forest, Errol finally succeeds. He replicates the double strike. In that same moment of success, a goblin suddenly attacks. Without hesitation, Errol uses the technique and kills it instantly. But then, a massive hobgoblin appears. Before it moves, Errol hears a familiar voice. He rushes forward and finds the red-haired young man, injured and surrounded. Without hesitation, Errol attacks from behind, unleashing the double strike and bringing the monster down. After the battle, he realizes the situation. The young man is severely wounded, and his protection blessing is shattered. Errol gives him holy water. His wounds begin to heal. The young man, still surprised, asks how Errol learned that skill without a class. Errol answers simply, through training. Then he admits the truth. He copied his movements and considers him his true mentor. The red-haired young man is taken aback, but then he accepts a rematch. The duel begins again. Double strike clashes against double strike. But then Errol goes further. A third strike. He explains calmly, because he has no class, he is free to shape his techniques however he wants. In the end, Errol wins. He ends the duel cleanly, then quietly states that the outcome was expected, and walks away victorious. Days later, during dinner, Errol's mother mentions that the son of the guard captain, Ivan, has left for training in Bria. Errol is curious. He asks about this place. She smiles. Bria, the city of swords. She trained there before her marriage. At that moment, Errol feels it. A place where he can truly grow. 5 years pass. Errol matures, setting out on a journey to Bria aboard a carriage traveling through the forest. Along the way, some passengers begin arguing, revealing the danger of the classes they possess. Then, the carriage suddenly stops. A group of orcs blocks the road. Fear spreads instantly, especially with the appearance of an orc king. Even the swordsmen lose their courage, but Errol steps forward, calm, steady. He cuts through the orcs with overwhelming force. When surrounded, he unleashes a spinning technique, like a vortex, tearing through them. The driver freezes. He recognizes it. Sword dance, the signature technique of the sword princess. Shock fills him. How can a young man use a technique known to be exclusive? At that moment, Errol leaps toward the orc king, evades its attack, and drives his blade into its head. The monster collapses. After that, Errol returns to the carriage and asks the driver to take him to Bria so he can continue his training. The driver admits that his strength is frightening, and everyone is shocked when Errol reveals that he has no class at all. The scene shifts back 5 years. Errol shows his mother the double strike he learned from the red-haired young man. At first, she thinks she is dreaming, but he explains that he can learn techniques without needing a class. He asks her to teach him her own techniques before he leaves for Bria, leaving her stunned by his unique talent. Back to the present. It turns out the driver is actually an advanced holy knight who chose to work as a driver to distance himself from constant battles. He advises Errol to join a sword guild and participate in the city's tournaments. When Errol arrives in Bria, he is surprised by the number of swordsmen everywhere. After stepping off the carriage, a girl named Lilia tries to recruit him into her guild, but he refuses and points out her weaknesses. When he asks about the strongest guild, she tells him it is the Dark Guild. He heads there, but is rejected for having no class. The same happens with other guilds. Rejection. Again and again. Frustration begins to build. At that moment, Errol remembers the recommendation letter his mother wrote for an old guild. He realizes she expected this outcome, so he returns to Lilia. In the end, she takes him to the guild headquarters and introduces him to her father, the former Twin Sword King, who is now drunk and considering shutting down the guild. Despite everything, Errol decides to join them. When he signs the contract, Lilia discovers that he has no class and is completely shocked. At that moment, Rihanna enters. It becomes clear that she and Errol share a past. She is the same red-haired young fighter he used to train and fight with. She is surprised by how much he has grown. Then Lilia challenges him, a duel against Rihanna inside the guild's training ground. The fight begins. Rihanna attacks with double strike. Errol believes he can block it easily, but her strike breaks through his defense due to the weight of her sword and her class enhancements. He realizes it. She has improved. Even so, Errol uses shadow techniques and counterattacks learned from his mother. In the end, he defeats her. Lilia announces his victory. Rihanna breaks down in tears, unable to accept her loss despite her strength. After she calms down, Lilia welcomes Errol into their guild, Dragonfang. She explains that the guild is drowning in debt, and their only hope is to win the upcoming tournament. But there is a problem. Their team has only 3 members, while other teams have 5. Even so, Errol is excited. He came to Bria for stronger opponents. The next day, Errol wakes up to his new life inside the guild. He greets Lilia and Rihanna. Rihanna remains silent, while Lilia announces that they are officially registered in the guild tournament. She explains the rules. Victory comes by eliminating the opposing team entirely. Errol feels some concern about their numbers, but Lilia remains optimistic. She explains that most opponents will not be rank A. Then she describes the ranking system, from D to A. mentioning that Bria has only around 20 rank A swordsmen. Both she and Rihanna are rank B. Even though Errol defeated Rihanna, he is not considered at the level of rank A, as the gap is extremely large. After that, Lilia remembers that the tournament draw is near and rushes to check the results, while Errol heads to train. He observes Rihanna's abilities and asks about the endurance skill that strengthens her defense. Then, suddenly he asks her to teach him. She misunderstands at first until he explains that he wants her to strike him with her sword while it is still sheathed. He says that the best way to understand endurance is to feel pain. She tells him it is a sacred blessing tied to her class. But Errol responds calmly. He learned everything he has, from shadow techniques to double strike, without any class. In the end, she agrees to train him. Lilia realizes that Rihanna has no experience with love, so she tries to get closer to Errol, but Rihanna objects. Errol jokes with them, easing the tension. Inside the training hall, Rod doubts their chances. Lilia says they defeated the Dark Guild, but he assumes they were beginners. When she says they were rank A, he still doubts, until she reveals Errol defeated them alone. She shows the money she won and says the guild is recovering thanks to Errol. Rod warns that someone like him may leave for a bigger guild, but she ignores him and suddenly says she wants to marry him. Errol refuses immediately. Rod tells her to stop. Errol says Lilia, despite being reckless, is better than those who give up. Then he tells Rod he can still fight with one hand. Rod gets angry, saying a twin swordsman without two swords is nothing. Errol replies that he is still strong, and his real problem is giving up. Rihanna agrees and says he needs his passion back. Errol asks Rod to train him. After that, Lilia suggests entering a dungeon. She explains it is full of traps and monsters. Instead of fear, Errol and Rihanna get excited. Rihanna says she needs experience for the Sword King Cup. Lilia gives Errol a registration paper, but he tears it, thinking it is a marriage contract. She says she was joking. Elsewhere, a man watches them through a crystal sphere and decides the time has come. The next morning, Lilia tries to wake Errol and annoys him, so he ties her to the bed and goes to Rihanna, but finds her asleep. He returns while Lilia keeps shouting. They arrive at the dungeon filled with adventurers. Rihanna says everyone trains here for the Sword King Cup. A magic gate takes them inside. Errol wants stronger enemies, so they head to lower floors. In a dark corridor, monsters attack. Errol cuts one but notices it keeps moving. Rihanna says they are enchanted with no clear weak points. Errol decides, target the legs. They take one down. Rihanna says it will regenerate, but Errol sees it as good training. They hear a cry for help from Dale, who says his team is trapped. Rihanna wants to help, but Lilia asks for payment. Dale insults them, then shows gold, so she agrees. Errol suspects him but continues. Dale leads them to a hidden room. When Lilia touches a coin, a magic circle traps them. Dale laughs and reveals the trick, but the trap is stronger than expected. They are suddenly teleported deeper. The coin shines, and a mysterious knight appears. Dale admits he was bait. The knight says they reach the deepest layer, tombs of the sword rulers. Errol is shocked, as they were thought to be legends. The knight attacks with air slash. Errol pushes Lilia away and takes the hit. His protection blessing blocks it. In the next moment, he appears in front of the knight. This is the perfect chance to test my strength. But the knight uses holy presence, a massive pressure that weakens everyone around him. At that moment, Errol remembers his mother's training, how to overcome it using infinite break. The fight continues. The knight is surprised that Errol can still move under the pressure. Errol corrects his timing, activates infinite break, and destroys the knight's armor completely. Lilia celebrates and calls him her husband, but Errol denies it again. Rihanna asks how he knows this skill, and he tells her his mother taught him, shocking them. Rihanna then asks why his mother, the Sword Princess, disappeared into a remote village. Errol explains she simply dislikes attention. Rihanna feels embarrassed and says she wouldn't have challenged him if she had known. Errol reassures her, saying he learned a lot from her, and it is normal for him. After that, an exit path opens. Elsewhere, inside a tavern, the men who hired Dale celebrate their plan to destroy Dragon Fang. Rod hears them and confronts them. George mocks him, but everything changes when Lilia and her team enter unharmed. Rod is relieved and rushes to his daughter, while George loses his composure, shocked they survived and defeated his knight. Lilia reveals that Dale confessed everything and exposed George as the mastermind. George denies it, claiming no responsibility for what happens in the dungeon. The team stands against him. He retreats angrily, muttering that they should have died. Later, George reveals his hatred toward talents who took his glory, like Rod, the Twin Sword King, and the Sword Princess. As his anger rises, a mysterious demonic sword appears before him. He steps back in shock and asks what it is. A voice from the sword answers. His hatred has reached it, and it will grant his wish. George steps back in fear and asks again, "Who are you?" After that, Errol joins the Sword King Cup and asks why there are preliminaries. Rihanna explains that the number of participants is too large, so they reduce it through qualifiers. Meanwhile, Lilia loses hope in winning the cup. Errol tells her not to give up so easily and tries to comfort her, saying that entering the tournament itself is an achievement, but his words only make her feel worse. At the same time, Rihanna is placed in a different group from Errol, giving her a chance to win. Her group is strong, but she is confident she can qualify this year. Errol adds that her father will be proud if she succeeds, reminding her of her goal. At that moment, Lilia regains her determination and decides not to give up. Later, the three decide to return to the dungeon. Errol hesitates at first, but Lilia insists he come, saying they need someone to take care of them. Rihanna notices that Lilia rarely relies on herself. At that moment, Rod appears and warns them that George is targeting them outside the dungeon. He tells them to be careful. They could lose more than just a fight. Lilia understands and leaves the room. Rod apologizes for his past behavior and admits he needs to regain his strength. Errol encourages him. Days later, the preliminaries of the Sword King Cup begin. The battles start, but Lilia loses and fails to reach the finals. After that, Errol tells her directly that she would have lost even if they were not in the same group, and admits he wanted to fight her. His blunt words fail to comfort her, and she starts crying. Finally, Lilia tells him the next round is the finals and warns him not to underestimate his opponents. She points out his next opponent, who has unique skills, and tells him to be very careful. But Errol does not think anything will surprise him, especially after facing similar abilities inside the dungeon. But Lilia warns him that everything he has seen so far are only sword skills, and facing magic in the tournament will be completely different. Errol is surprised and asks if magic is allowed. Lilia tells him it does not matter. The only condition is being part of a guild. Errol accepts this easily, especially since he is competing without a class. The supervisor then calls the contestants to the arena, and Errol steps forward to face his opponent. The girl introduces herself as a magic swordsman and says she does not want excuses about magic being unfair if he loses. Errol calmly agrees, saying the stronger one will win. The fight begins. She attacks with fireballs, but Errol dodges easily, moving while avoiding and cutting through them. When they clash in close combat, Errol notices how quickly she switches between sword and magic. She confidently says someone without rank cannot defeat her. But Errol realizes that despite her versatility, she is not superior in either sword or magic, and her level is below advanced fighters. She gets angry and ignites her sword with fire, a signature ability of her class. Errol is slightly affected, but continues defending and dodging. He admits her movements are hard to predict, and that she has real talent, even saying she could become strong if she masters her style. She believes she has the advantage, but Errol begins blocking her attacks with one hand, and tells her she has not reached master level. He adds that her skill would be stronger if she had sword mastery like Lilia, which deeply offends her. Then, Errol attacks. He uses double strike to break her fire magic, then follows with a decisive blow that knocks her unconscious. He feels satisfied facing a new skill he can learn in this city. The crowd celebrates as Errol wins Group 4. He starts thinking about learning magic through training. Days later, Lilia tries to wake her father so he can attend and support Errol, but he refuses due to exhaustion. She pushes him, then accuses him of fearing George. He gets angry, stands up, and says what he fears is responsibility and staying away from alcohol. He admits his sword skill has declined and that the Sword King Cup is now harder. But Lilia's situation is worse. Some cannot even enter the tournament. In the end, he agrees to go with her. On the way, Lilia wonders if he would have come secretly. A memory appears of him training Rihanna and encouraging her. Back in the present, Lilia explains how much he loves seeing guild members grow and that he would not miss watching Rihanna. He agrees and says Lilia resembles her mother. As the tournament begins, Rihanna looks tense. Errol reassures her. She says it is natural in a tournament like this, especially without knowing the opponent. At that moment, the first match is announced. George, the Sword Emperor, last year's champion, against Errol. Errol enters calmly. Rihanna watches with concern, while Lilia cheers him on. George appears with a terrifying presence, almost like a different being. Even the guildmaster is shocked, and when he sees the sword, he shouts at Errol not to approach. It holds a powerful sealed demon. The legend says the sword of the sword ruler, which once defeated an ancient demon, became cursed, and that demon was sealed inside it under strict guard. George reveals the seal is broken, and the demon has waited centuries for this moment, needing only someone reckless to release it. The demon introduces itself, Doralda, and declares the beginning of chaos. Errol is surprised that Rihanna knows the name. She explains it was studied in history books, though believed to be a myth. Panic spreads. The crowd begins to flee, and their screams amuse the demon, but it is not enough to make up for centuries of imprisonment. Then, the demon casts Wall of Despair, trapping everyone inside the arena. The tournament turns into a nightmare. Amid the chaos, the demon notices Errol preparing to fight and mocks him, but Errol remains calm. He is confident because he has faced a similar power before. The demon laughs, saying the sword ruler is dead and no one can stop him. Errol calmly corrects him. He still exists and he can defeat him himself. The demon mocks him, but Errol suddenly attacks using Sacred Step, a skill of the sword ruler. The demon strikes back, but Errol stands unharmed thanks to endurance. Then Errol activates Infinite Break and overwhelms him, forcing the demon to admit it is the same skill of the former sword ruler. Errol declares he is just rankless, and with one more strike, nearly defeats him. But the demon retreats, searching for a new host. He chooses Rod, takes over his body, and breaks through the arena walls. Errol realizes the sword is the demon's true body, not George, and that he can defeat it again. The demon tries to threaten him through Lilia, but the plan fails when she admits she lied and is not his future wife. At the same time, Rod resists the possession. The demon cannot fully control him. Lilia escapes, Rod regains himself, and throws the sword to Errol, saying the fight awakened his former strength. Errol delivers the final attack and destroys the demon completely. Wall of Despair disappears. Errol confirms the demon will not return. After that, hundreds of students apply to join his guild. Lilia is happy to see it restored, but she is sad because Errol leaves. Rihanna follows him. On the way, they meet the knight who once drove him. The knight asks why he returned to that remote village. Errol answers that he has nothing left to learn in the city. His opponents became like training dummies. Now he wants to test himself against his teachers, even his mother, the sword princess, Farah. The knight laughs, saying, defeating the strongest swordswoman is not easy. Back in the village, Farah senses Errol while picking flowers and prepares a bouquet for his return. Errol admits he tried to arrive unnoticed, but knew it was impossible. Farah notices his growth. She only sensed him when he got close. He tells her he won the Sword King Cup. She is pleased. She offers him a flower. Errol is shocked and realizes the gap between them is still huge. He admits he would have died if it were a sword. When he reaches for his blade, she understands. He wants to challenge her. She agrees, but says they cannot fight near the village. They move to the mountain. Farah shows excitement, while Errol tells her to prepare. The battle will be legendary. Suddenly, Farah disappears and attacks at extreme speed. Errol barely blocks. She warns him she will fight seriously. He realizes she is still far stronger, and that combining Sacred Step would have defeated him instantly. Errol jumps and attacks. She blocks easily. She notices he is combining his techniques and feels proud, but he is still below her. She explains she blocked him without using any skill. He understands. Her true strength lies in timing and positioning. Farah praises him. He reminds her of how he used to fight without relying on skills. The duel intensifies. Each clash releases massive energy, shaking the area and destroying nearby trees. At the peak, Errol gathers everything he learned and launches a powerful strike. She blocks it, but he follows instantly. In the end, both activate sword magic and finish the battle with destructive power. After that, Rihanna arrives at Errol's house. Mira opens the door and asks why she came. Rihanna says she wants to see Errol, but Mira reacts to her appearance and tries to send her away, saying Errol is not interested in girls like her. At that moment, Errol and Farah arrive. Farah tells Mira to calm down. Errol is surprised to see Rihanna, but before she speaks, Mira asks why they are dirty. Errol says he barely kept up with Farah in their duel. After cleaning up, Farah asks how Errol and Rihanna met, then suddenly asks how many children they will have. Rihanna is embarrassed. Errol explains she is just his guild teammate and the same girl he fought 5 years ago. Rihanna recalls awkward memories. Then Errol asks why she came. She says she could not leave the guild suddenly, so she followed him. Farah is happy, but Rihanna adds that her real goal is to train under Farah. At the same time, Ivan, Rihanna's father, arrives to speak with Farah about what he thought was a monster attack. He explains, but Farah tells him it was only a hunt. He notices Rihanna and asks why she is here. Farah jokes that she is training to be a good housewife. Ivan is shocked and starts crying, while Rihanna denies it but eventually gives up under the pressure. After that, Errol visits his father, the Archmage Leon. Leon is busy with research and shows him magic circles and techniques. He asks about Rihanna, but Errol ignores it and says he almost defeated Farah. Leon congratulates him and understands why he came. Errol asks to learn magic, but Leon explains it is completely different from swordsmanship. Meanwhile, Rihanna causes chaos in the kitchen while cooking and breaks one of Mira's cups. Farah asks about it, and Rihanna says she is cursed at cooking. She tries to leave to train with the sword, but Farah refuses, saying cutting people is not like cutting vegetables, and insists on training her to suit Errol. At the same time, Errol helps Leon clean up and asks why they do not use magic. Leon shows a repair spell that restores the cup, but explains magic requires mana, and not everyone has it. Errol believes he can use it. Leon says it is possible, but difficult without mana, and if he had it from the start, he would have received a mage class. Errol insists he has mana and remembers that his protection blessing did not recover after using the guild's holy water without multiple doses. Leon realizes Errol's power comes from his own mana, not a class blessing, so he decides to teach him. He asks him to gather mana in his hand. Errol forms a small mana sphere, satisfying Leon despite his exhaustion. Leon explains he is still a beginner and needs more mana, and the only way to increase it is daily use. The next day, after recovering, Errol buys a large supply of mana potions for a year and begins training while consuming them. He meditates and trains under Leon for 6 months. By the end, he can control his mana without collapsing. Though still a beginner, Leon praises his control. Errol thinks he can cast spells, but Leon stops him, saying he needs a license. He explains mages cannot cast spells without learning them formally and must study them. He says magic takes time and advises him to join a magic academy, but first he must prepare for the entrance exam. Later, they eat the meal Rihanna prepared. Leon shows some magic, increasing Errol's motivation. 3 years pass. Rihanna trains in housework. She serves tea to Farah nervously. Farah praises it, reassuring her. Suddenly, Mira enters crying and says Errol left a letter. Rihanna reads it. He went to the magic city. Mira breaks down. Rihanna feels guilty, but Farah comforts her and tells her not to leave like Errol. Rihanna promises she will stay, and Farah says everything will be fine as long as her children are safe. At the same time, Errol is on a carriage heading to the magic city. The driver says the trip will take 3 days and asks why he travels so much, drawing attention from the passengers. Some ask if he is going to the magic academy. He confirms. He meets 3 young students, Kai, Clover, and Colette, and notices they are beginner mages with magic classes. Kai says he uses fire magic and asks Errol about his type. Errol answers, he has no class. Clover laughs and says it is impossible to enter the academy without one. Errol shows his card, and they start mocking him. A loud roar echoes from the forest. The horses panic and lose control. Errol immediately realizes it's the Troll King. Kai tells the driver to run, but the horses are too frightened. The students try to act brave, but their fear is obvious. 2 trolls appear. Then the real Troll King, far larger. Kai steps down, trembling. He gathers his remaining mana and launches a powerful fireball. The girls think he succeeded, but the monster only gets angrier. Kai admits his mana is gone. The Troll King moves to attack. Suddenly, a massive spell explodes and destroys it completely. Everyone is shocked. Errol steps down from the carriage, thinking he may have used too much mana. Kai asks if it was him. Clover says that level of explosion is high-tier red magic. Kai is stunned. Errol then heals the horses with magic. They calm down, and the driver thanks him. Errol asks the driver to show his skills again, but he refuses, saying it requires too much effort. Kai apologizes and calls Errol a great mage, even declaring himself his student. Errol tries to explain he is just a classless mage, but they think he is hiding his truth. He realizes it would have been easier to use a sword. The journey continues. After 3 days, they arrive at a floating island city. Kai points at it. The magic city. Errol is amazed by the buildings. Kai explains even the bridge is created with magic. Errol notices Kai is overly attached to him, while Clover suspects he used magic to influence them, which annoys him. As they enter, Kai asks if he will join the Fire Magic Academy. Errol is surprised. Kai explains the academies are divided by elements, each with its own system. Clover will join water. Colette will join wind. Errol understands he must pass an entrance exam and hopes he is not rejected. After separating from the girls, he goes with Kai to the Fire Academy. When submitting his application, the staff checks his data. He expects rejection for having no class, but they accept him normally. They head to the test area. A young boy steps forward and casts a fireball, proudly declaring himself an advanced mage. Everyone is shocked. Errol asks about advanced class. Kai calls him arrogant, while Errol sees nothing special. The boy then casts an explosion spell, burning the test dummy. Everyone is stunned. Kai starts praising Errol, provoking the boy. Errol stays silent, so the boy assumes he is scared. The boy claims he destroyed the metal dummy. Errol tells him to look again. It is still intact. The examiner explains it is made of a strong material. Errol becomes curious. He steps forward and uses his full power. The examiner is surprised by his method. Errol releases an explosion spell. It appears as a thin line of fire. The boy mocks it. Then suddenly, the dummy is completely destroyed. Everyone is shocked. The boy cannot believe it and accuses Errol of cheating. Errol explains he compressed the energy to increase heat, but the boy cannot understand. After that, Errol leaves. Kai asks where he is going. He answers he will take the tests for the other academies as well. Soon after, he reaches the Water Academy. Clover has already finished. She is surprised to see him. He says he will try too. When his turn comes, he uses a spell that forms sharp ice blades, shattering the dummy. Then he heads to the Wind Academy. There he finds Colette sitting alone, nervous. He asks why she has not taken the test. She says she is too anxious even to register and needs support. Errol tells her to try. She asks how he deals with fear. He answers he has never felt it. She is shocked. She explains people fear failure. After thinking, he asks if she failed before. She says many times, and that is why she is afraid. She assumes he went through the same. Errol does not understand why she fears it and says failure is not the end. His words shake her. She gathers courage to try again. After calming down, she thanks him. Then he asks about the Wind Academy test system. Colette explains that the Wind Academy test requires powering a windmill using magic. Errol registers, enters the test, focuses his mana, and releases a powerful wind spell that destroys the windmill. He realizes it was not made of the same strong material as the other test dummies. The examiner declares his success and asks Colette to begin. Despite her nerves, Errol reminds her to stay calm, and she succeeds. After that, Errol goes to the other academies and passes all the tests. Finally, he reaches the Dark Magic Academy and is shocked by its poor condition. Inside, he notices a strange creature inside a box. A woman suddenly appears and asks if he saw her pet Joy. Errol points to the box. She takes it happily and says she created it herself. At that moment, a skeleton appears and cuts off her head instantly. Errol is shocked. The skeleton introduces itself as Latalia. Errol asks about the dark magic test. Latalia says no one cares about it, so there is no exam. Despite that, Errol decides to join. Back in the city, Kai, Clover, and Colette call out to him. They ask which academy he will choose and start arguing. Errol answers calmly, all of them. Kai is shocked and says it is impossible. Errol shows 6 acceptance cards, and everyone is stunned. He explains each academy keeps records separate, but the problem is the schedule conflict. Attendance is only 20% of evaluation, while exams matter more. Colette says it will still be hard, so Errol suggests sharing notes. They agree. He decides to attend 3 academies himself, especially since dark magic has no schedule. 2 remain. Kai asks him to attend the first class with him. Despite how crazy it sounds, Errol stays calm. They enter the class and sit in the back. The advanced student Royce notices them. Kai mocks him for losing to Errol. Royce gets angry and calls Errol a spellcrafter. Errol denies it. Royce assumes he is a normal mage. Errol denies that too, leaving him confused. The teacher enters. Royce asks about Errol's class. The teacher checks and calmly says, Errol has no class. Royce is shocked. The lesson begins. The teacher writes complex spells. Kai struggles, but Errol realizes they are basic magic language. The teacher explains understanding spells is necessary for higher levels. He adds that mastering the language increases power and reduces mana cost. Errol becomes interested. The teacher says advanced mages can create new effects by rearranging spells. Kai realizes Errol was doing this naturally. Errol remembers how his father handled spells easily. The next day, Errol goes to the Wind Academy. He feels slightly bored since nothing new appeared before, but is still interested in flying. Colette is surprised that basic flight is new to him. He says his father feared heights and never let him try. The teacher tells them to imagine moving with air like birds. Errol realizes this method suits Wind class users, not him. Colette manages to fly briefly, then falls. Others laugh, but she refuses to give up. Errol watches and believes she will succeed soon. When his turn comes, he uses a wind spell, but it is too strong. He rises high, then crashes down. He realizes his method was wrong. At that moment, another student approaches, mocks him, and shows his flying skill, saying he can win any race. Errol is surprised and asks about the race. Colette explains that wind users compete in difficult courses to test their flying skills. Errol gets excited and decides to join, but the student says it requires real flying skill. Errol replies confidently that he can learn it through training. The student says the race is in 2 months and that Errol needs at least 6 months, advising him to wait until next year. Errol insists he will be ready and Colette believes him. A few days later, Kai goes to the Wind Academy with the girls. They mention strange rumors, scaring him, while Clover mocks him. They argue until Colette asks them to be quiet. Suddenly, they see a figure behind her and scream. The figure enters through the window and covers Colette's mouth. Kai tries to threaten it, but it reveals itself. Errol. They ask what he is doing. He points to himself floating and says he trains flying every night. Clover realizes the truth, while Kai worries about him. Errol reassures them, saying he sleeps while using the spell. They are shocked. He explains it saves time and helps recovery. Clover doubts it, but he insists he is fine. She ends up impressed. Kai admits he has been slacking and cannot reach Errol's level, but will improve in his own way. Errol tells him to overcome his fear first. The girls also decide to train harder. After that, they return Colette's item and leave. Errol thinks about his next step and goes to the Dark Magic Academy. Latalia is surprised to see him. He says he only wants to use the library. She is disappointed but gives him access. He explains he is interested in rare dark magic books. She tries to recruit him, but he refuses. The next day during fire class, Errol raises his hand and points out a mistake in a spell. The teacher is surprised, then confirms it and corrects it. Kai is impressed. Errol explains he must memorize spells since he cannot summon them naturally. Kai is surprised, so Errol says he shortens spells to save memory. The teacher asks him to write his version. Errol presents a shorter spell by removing 2 lines. The teacher praises him but warns it lacks safety systems and could explode. Errol says his protection blessing is enough. The teacher is surprised by his tolerance, but Errol says he can endure as long as he does not die. After thinking, the teacher offers him a direct promotion test to the 2nd class. Errol agrees, and Royce asks to take it too. They go to a sealed arena. The teacher explains a monster will appear and must be defeated, warning them not to get close. Royce goes first. A large minotaur appears. Royce panics as it charges. He casts a strong explosion, but it dodges and keeps attacking. Errol is impressed by the power, but notices the lack of accuracy. Royce tries a firewall but misses again. The Minotaur gets close and raises its arm. Royce freezes. Suddenly, the monster disappears. The teacher laughs and says the school will not put students in real danger. Errol notices he enjoyed it, while Royce feels frustrated. The teacher comforts him, saying his result is good for his level. But Royce realizes the truth. Errol has already surpassed him. He understands the test showed his limits. In the end, he admits his weakness and promises to train seriously. The teacher nods, then tells Errol to prepare. Errol steps into the test arena. The teacher tells him he will face the same monster. The gate opens. A minotaur appears, but Errol immediately notices it is different. Even the teacher is confused. Another instructor arrives, revealing she released a higher-level minotaur for Errol. The teacher is shocked. The minotaur charges. Errol calmly summons 2 flaming spears, surprising them. Bakos notes that while weaker than explosion magic, they are more precise. Errol throws them. The minotaur jumps over them. The teacher realizes this is normal for a high-level minotaur and starts worrying. He offers help, but Errol refuses. Bakos says direct attacks will not work. Errol adjusts. He redirects the spears from behind. They pierce the minotaur and bring it down. Bakos asks if he added tracking. He confirms. Errol finishes it with an explosion spell, turning it to ash. The teacher is stunned and begins doubting his no-class status. Errol walks out and asks if he passed. Bakos answers, obviously. She tells him to join 2nd-level classes. Later, Kai hears about his promotion and brags about him, But Errol is not fully satisfied since he needed special permission and worries other academies will not allow it. The girls realize he wants promotion everywhere. In fact, all 6 academies. They are shocked. Elsewhere, Rihanna tries cooking alone but struggles with heat. She keeps trying, afraid of the oil. Mira rushes her, but Farah tells her to be patient, saying strength takes time, just like Errol. Mira says Rihanna cannot be compared to him. Rihanna agrees and wonders what he is doing now. At the Water Academy, Errol asks Hangul for a promotion test. She says he must wait, but he asks for an exception. She explains exceptions are for top students. He offers to prove himself. She sighs and says she might consider it if he performs well in class. Errol replies he does not want to attend classes that add nothing, which angers her. He clarifies his level is already higher. This provokes her, so she challenges him. They go to a training field. Clover watches, curious. Hangul sets the rules, no physical attacks. Errol agrees and steps back. She thinks he is afraid, but he says calmly he cannot guarantee victory, yet sees a good chance. She attacks first, an ice storm traps him. Clover worries. Hangul assumes she won. Then, Errol breaks the ice from inside. He used an ice barrier. Hangul is finally surprised. Errol summons many ice spikes and attacks. She thinks it is simple, but he follows with a second wave, changing the rhythm completely. Errol continues his attack with ice shards. Hangul forms ice blades to block them. Seeing her defense, Errol realizes she deserves her position. Hangul recalls his entrance test and assumes ice magic is his specialty. She says it is hers too and challenges him directly. Errol intensifies his attack, creating more shards. Hangul keeps up. Then, he creates 100 shards, surrounding her completely. Hangul realizes controlling that number requires complex spell changes. She has no time to counter. Errol attacks. She blocks with a strong barrier, but she notices his power does not weaken despite heavy mana use. Then she realizes the shards are freezing around the barrier, making it thicker. She thinks she will win when his mana runs out, but Errol says he will end it now. She is confused. His attacks did not break her defense. He reveals that was not the goal. At that moment, a massive ice spear drops from above. Hangul is shocked by his mana. She tries to block, but the spear pierces through and defeats her. Errol wins. After that, he leaves and meets his friends. They tell him Hangul promoted him directly to the highest level, recognizing his goal to master all magic types. Then he goes to the Wind Academy for promotion. The teacher, with Colette present, says they do not allow exceptions. Colette tries to pull him away, but the teacher checks the rules and finds the principal can grant direct promotion. Errol sees a chance, but she refuses to let him meet him and warns him not to cause trouble. He stays calm. Colette asks why he is rushing. He says he is trying to catch up to someone he admires. He asks to show his skills, but she refuses again. Then Colette remembers. The principal gives the prize to the race winner. Errol realizes this is his chance. The teacher warns him. The race has over 300 participants. Still, he decides to join. During preparation, a proud student named Skite appears. Errol does not remember him, hurting his pride. Skite introduces himself and declares he will become the greatest wind user. Errol simply says he will win. Skite is shocked, knowing Errol could not fly 2 months ago. Errol says he trained hard. The event begins. Jared announces the race. The course circles the entire Magic City and returns to the start. He also introduces the principal as a guest. Then comes the commentator, Dumble, impressing the crowd, especially the girls, making Kai jealous. The racers line up. The race starts. They launch into the air. At first, many inexperienced participants collide and fall. Only the strongest remain. Jared continues commentary. Suddenly, one racer loses control and crashes into the audience. Dumble notes the same mistake happened last year. At the same time, a racer named Dion leads within the top 15. Dumble notices new faces, and when he focuses on Skite and Errol, Skite is surprised Errol keeps up at this speed. Errol says calmly that professionals do not go full speed early. They save energy. Skite is shocked. He calls this speed slow. Errol notices a sharp turn at a narrow passage near the gate and prepares. The racers reach it. The crowd holds its breath. The first 2 fail and fall into the lake. Skeet barely passes. He thinks he lost Errol, but Errol catches up easily. As the race continues, Jared says they reach the midpoint. With Dion leading, Dumble expects her to win again, as she is a 3-time champion, but Skite and Errol keeping up excites the crowd. Dion is surprised and increases her speed. Skeet tries to follow, but his mana runs out. He admits defeat. Dumble praises his effort. Now, all focus on Errol. He keeps flying beside Dion. She speeds up again. Errol reaches his limit. then uses a special technique. He releases air bursts under his feet, boosting his speed. Jared is surprised. Dumble explains he compresses air and pushes it for acceleration, but the real power comes from Errol's leg strength, something only high-level swordsmen can do. Errol realizes this. He is using a movement skill called Suar. Near the finish, Jared wonders who will win. Dumble points to the final sharp turn at the gate. Dion slows down to pass it, but Errol does not. She is forced to stay behind him. Jared praises him, but doubts he can pass. Suddenly, Errol strikes the air ahead, reducing speed and changing direction. He passes smoothly, crosses the finish line, and wins his first race. After the race, Dion congratulates him and promises to return stronger next year. Skeet finishes third. Then, the principal congratulates Errol and gives him a certificate and medal. Errol asks for promotion. The principal agrees immediately and moves him to second year, asking about his skills. Errol says he learned them at the academy. The principal doubts it but wishes him well. Errol feels satisfied after advancing in fire, water, and wind academies and aims to complete the rest. Days later, he goes to the Yellow Magic Academy and asks about promotion. A teacher says he must present an invention at the school exhibition, but all spots are full. He tries to convince her and says he created a new type of golem, but she refuses. At that moment, a teacher named Raguel steps in, interested in his idea. He offers him a research assistant position in exchange for a spot. Errol feels unsure, but accepts. The first teacher feels something is wrong, confusing Errol. She explains that although Raguel will let him join the exhibition, his conditions are harsh. He is obsessed with golems and uses them to crush weaker students. Errol realizes he was just an experiment. She offers to help him withdraw, but he refuses, saying he can fight. Days later, the exhibition begins. Teachers present their inventions. Raguel enters and announces his golems, and the crowd whispers that he is looking for a victim. He summons earth golems and asks Errol to present his. Errol calls Alpha. Raguel is shocked. It is fully metal. The students are impressed. He assumes it is slow and checks inside, removing the head, empty. He realizes it is made from a light alloy. Raguel orders his golems to attack. One charges, but Alpha blocks easily and breaks its arm. Raguel is shocked. After repairing it, he orders all golems to reinforce and attack together, believing Alpha cannot defend. Errol summons swords for Alpha. Raguel mocks him and orders the final attack, but Alpha destroys all golems in one strike. Raguel is stunned. Errol thinks it is simple, but Raguel says such sword skill cannot come from a normal golem. Errol explains he designed it with flexible joints and light metal to reduce mana use and increase mobility. Raguel understands but remains shocked. Errol asks if this is enough for promotion. Raguel says assistance cannot apply, but offers direct promotion if he joins his lab. Errol agrees. After advancing in yellow magic, he goes to the White Magic Institute. There, he meets Kaidi, who is blind but sees magical energy. When she examines him, she is shocked by his limitless energy. He reassures her. She ignores it and takes him into a cave, explaining it is filled with skeletons animated by magic. Errol uses light magic. She warns him. Too late. Skeletons attack, but he destroys them instantly with holy light and moves forward. Kaidi follows and tells him he already passed. The test only required defeating a few enemies. She worries about his mana use, but he says he has not used even 1%. Suddenly, a strong undead appears. Errol pushes it back with holy light. It tries to speak, but he keeps attacking. Then, Kaidi is shocked. She says he defeated White, a high-rank undead, and that only experts use this spell. Errol says it is just a stronger version of holy light, leaving her speechless. After that, he goes to the dark magic school. While reading, Latalia appears behind him, and he accidentally cuts off her head. She calmly picks it up. Errol is frustrated there are no promotion tests. Latalia explains the system collapsed after the school declined, and the place is almost abandoned. Errol notices and asks about a room behind the library. She says it is a dark magic lab used internally because of its danger. Errol decides to use it. While reading a book, it suddenly emits a blinding light. When it fades, the book is empty. Errol realizes the magic energy escaped and starts searching for it, sensing a dark aura. Errol sees a man floating in the air. The entity thanks him for freeing it from the book. When Errol asks if he is a demon, he confirms it. The demon smiles and offers him a reward for touching the book. Errol refuses. The demon reveals the truth. He needs a human sacrifice to return to his world, then attacks. Errol blocks easily and counters with his staff. He tries an explosion spell, but it fails. The demon says a barrier is blocking magic. Errol switches to physical combat. He swings his staff and splits the demon's head. The demon reforms quickly, surprised, and assumes Errol is a swordsman. Errol says he has no class. Errol continues attacking. The demon says physical attacks are useless, but Errol keeps striking, overwhelming him. Under pressure, the demon shrinks to conserve mana, until he is as small as a mouse. He admits defeat and begs him to stop. Errol agrees, but seals him instead. He explains the demon is now his servant. When the demon resists, he suffers pain. Errol warns him not to rebel. At that moment, Latalia arrives and is shocked, but Errol reassures her. After that, Errol meets his friends. They congratulate him. He tells his servant Mahdi to get food, and he leaves while complaining. On the way, Mahdi swears to break the contract and take revenge. 6 months later, the 6 academy heads meet. A supervisor explains the budget depends on performance and student count. When dark magic is mentioned, its director protests the budget cut. The supervisor says their low contribution is the reason. The director argues he cannot continue his research. The white magic head suggests shutting the school down, calling it dangerous. The supervisor refuses a final decision and says the budget may change based on the inter-school magic tournament. The dark magic director realizes the pressure and decides to win. At the same time, Errol asks his friends about they explain it is the biggest event and the school tournament is its main part. Kai asks if he will join. Errol says yes, in the beginner division. They get excited and argue about what magic he will use, but Errol says he will not limit himself. Mahdi asks which school he will represent. Errol says he will know after meeting the directors. Mahdi shows interest, then hides it. Elsewhere, at night, the dark magic director draws a summoning circle and declares he will show the true power of dark magic. He summons a massive demonic entity. A twisted mass appears. Then suddenly, it devours him. Moments later, it merges with him and escapes, beginning to take over the magic city. The next day, the strange mass begins moving, absorbing the monsters Black kept for experiments, growing stronger and larger. In the morning, Mahdi wakes Errol. At the Wind Academy, senior teachers gather to choose representatives. Black is absent, raising suspicion. They argue over candidates. Then Errol arrives. Immediately, each teacher wants him for their school. Before they decide, heavy footsteps approach. Everyone is shocked. Nearby, Kai, Clover, and Colette see the creature climbing walls, with monsters moving inside its body. Panic spreads. Students scatter while Errol rises into the air. At the same time, Royce attacks with a fire spear. It has no effect. He prepares a stronger spell, but claws strike him. Dion saves him. The monster continues. Colette falls. Clover shields her with ice, but it shatters. Kai's explosion fails. Colette thinks it's over, but remembers Errol's words and tries a wind attack. It fails. Before the claws reach her, Errol cuts them. He praises their courage. The teachers arrive and order everyone to flee. Errol asks to join, but they refuse. Watching the creature, they realize it is linked to dark magic. They attack. All spells are absorbed. The Wind Director realizes it does not resist magic. It absorbs it. The Yellow Director tries to trap it with earth walls. It breaks free. One suggests overwhelming it with mana, but another warns it will only grow stronger. The barrier collapses. From afar, Errol watches. He recognizes all the spells. Nothing new to learn. Mahdi asks if they will just watch. Errol decides to wait. Mahdi explains, the creature absorbs all magic. Mana is its food. Errol wonders, what if it is hit with more than it can absorb? Mahdi laughs. No one has that power. He adds physical attacks are also absorbed. But Errol sees a chance. He lands and summons his sword. Mahdi questions it. Errol reminds him he can fight with a blade. Mahdi feels insulted but is told to help. Meanwhile, the creature advances toward the city. The teachers consider evacuation. Then, Errol dives from the sky at high speed. He unleashes a powerful sword technique. A lightning dragon forms and strikes the creature directly. The students watch from afar. Mahdi is shocked. The slime could not absorb Errol's sword. Still, Errol is frustrated. His attack was not enough. The teachers arrive and ask if he is a swordsman. When he says he has no class, they are stunned. Errol tells them to stay back. Any magic will only make the slime stronger. Realizing this, the Wind Director sees it heading toward the main building. They try to help, but Errol insists they will only slow him down. Though hesitant, they leave to protect the students. On the ground, the slime begins to regenerate. Mari laughs, proud it survived. Errol threatens him, then hangs him in front of it. The slime retreats. Errol thinks it dislikes his taste. Mari thinks it fears them together. Errol traps it with an earth wall, then rises and summons golems. They surround it. Errol uses infinite break with their support. The slime is cut apart. The students cheer. He continues attacking with sword and magic. The teachers wonder how someone without a class can do this, but the golems begin to collapse. The slime regenerates again. Mari mocks him, so Errol changes his plan. He decides to use magic. Mari says it will only be absorbed. Errol believes overwhelming it with mana will work. He draws a magic circle, then 5 more. Mari is shocked. 6 elements at once. Errol merges them into one. He remembers Leon's warning. This kind of spell is unstable and could destroy everything. Still, he continues. The energy becomes harder to control. The slime approaches. Mari waits for failure. Then, light surrounds him. Students and teachers begin feeding him mana. With their help, he stabilizes the spell. Errol releases Annihilation. The black mass disappears completely. Mari is stunned. Errol grabs him, reminding him of his words. Mari quickly changes his tone, saying he was only joking. After punishing Mari, Errol approaches the pit where the slime was. Despite exhaustion, the teachers arrive, realizing his spell was not normal. It was a legendary spell used only by a mage lord. They wonder how someone his age reached this level. The yellow director says none of them knows the true path to that title. Errol calmly answers. He is classless, but learned annihilation from his father. They are shocked and ask if his father is Leon. He confirms. The fire director recalls Leon as a former colleague, always second and once a candidate for director before he disappeared. The water director remembers a similar genius who vanished. Errol explains his father mastered all 6 schools then left. When asked about becoming a mage lord, he answers simply, master all 6 types of magic. The teachers realize their system prevents reaching that level, and even dark magic is necessary. Before they continue, Errol disappears. Nearby, he finds a small piece of the slime that survived. Despite Mari's warning, he decides to tame it as a familiar. The next day, in his room, he succeeds and names it Wob Wob. It cleans like a vacuum, while Mari feels humiliated. Errol says the slime feels no pain and may have seen the fight as a game. Suddenly, Kai, Clover, and Colette rush in, worried he will leave. He confirms he will. There is nothing left to learn. They feel hurt, so he promises to visit. When asked about his next step, he says he will return to his village, then go to the monster city because of his familiar. They are shocked, but he reassures them. Elsewhere, a higher official scolds the directors for letting him leave. They say he cannot be forced. At that moment, Blog appears, revealing his body was destroyed, but his soul survived, and that dark magic is essential to creating a mage lord. Elsewhere, Errol says goodbye and leaves. During his journey, a shadowy figure watches him. He flies toward his village and talks with Mari about his family. He says they are normal, but the truth shocks Mari. His mother is the sword princess Farah, and his father is Leon. He explains they retired and live quietly. At night, he stops at a nearby village and enters an inn, then a hot bath. Suddenly, a mysterious girl enters. Mari panics, but Errol stays calm, sensing something unusual. She asks about his goal. He answers honestly. To become stronger and know the limits of a classless person. She is impressed and asks if he gets mocked. He admits it, but says it no longer matters. The next morning, she appears again and reveals her identity, Princess Cora. She says the queen is calling him. He refuses immediately, asking why a queen from another kingdom wants him. Cora says the queen has been searching for him. Errol refuses again, saying even that does not change his decision. After all her attempts fail, Cora takes action. She vanishes and appears behind Errol, trying to knock him out, but he dodges easily. She is shocked. Errol warns her, if she fights, he will not hold back. He strikes her and knocks her down. Then, he senses hidden presences and orders them to come out, revealing he knew from the start. A group of ninjas appears. Shocked, he detected them. Errol explains that hiding presence is not true invisibility. Their leader checks on Cora. She orders them to focus and not underestimate him. They attack together. Errol defeats them instantly. More reinforcements arrive and are shocked to see elite forces defeated. When they learn Errol did it, they are stunned by his strength without a class. Errol calmly appears, eating, and asks if they are from the same kingdom. One leader senses his aura and introduces herself. Princess Dora, Dragon Lady. She orders him to surrender. Korra disagrees, but Errol stops them and tells them to attack together. They use their strongest skills. It changes nothing. He defeats them all. Errol is disappointed but becomes curious why the Empire wants him, is the strongest and cannot be defeated. This interests him, so he decides to go himself. He flies to the castle. The gate is open. Inside, 4 elite generals surround him, each with unique abilities. They demand surrender. He defeats them easily. He enters the throne room. The last general is shocked. Then the queen appears and hugs him, saying she waited for this moment. She is his older sister. Errol tries to step back. She explains she built an empire where no one is judged by class and brought their family to live equally. She expects him to stay. He refuses. He says being classless gives him freedom to grow without limits, and he wants to keep learning. He thanks her and prepares to leave. She uses heaven's will to control him. His body stops, but he was ready. He used an air barrier to block it. The control fails. In the end, she accepts it. Errol leaves, promising to visit again. That night, he returns home. His mother hugs him, and Mira jumps with joy, surprised to see him with a demon and slime. That night, Rihanna talks with him about everything. He tells her about the magic city, while she quietly wishes he would stay longer. The next morning, Mira comes down crying, holding a letter. Errol left again, this time to the demon city. Rihanna smiles softly, knowing he cannot be stopped. In the sky, Errol flies with Madi, excited for a new journey and new powers. And here, the story comes to an end. We hope you enjoyed it. Before you leave, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more, and turn on notifications to stay updated with all new anime recaps. Share your thoughts in the comments. See you next time.